The Cleveland Browns had high hopes heading into this season, but after a devastating 33-17 blowout to the Dallas Cowboys, it's clear this team is in serious trouble. I mean, after watching Deshaun Watson struggle, the defense bend under pressure, and making Ezekiel Elliott look good, it's clear that Cleveland needs help. In the preseason, I heard all these reports that Watson started to resemble his Houston days, but that was obviously a complete lie. Deshaun Watson looked awful. The offense was stuck in neutral, and it sucks because this Browns team is one good quarterback away from a playoff run. The defense, which I believe was ranked number 1 last year, still looked really solid, but they did have some week 1 mistakes, and it costed them a lot of touchdowns. But you really can't sleep on Dallas's offense. In 2022, after trading for Deshaun Watson and giving him a fully guaranteed $230 million contract, the Browns put themselves in the spotlight. Watson's off-field issues and suspension kept him out for a couple games, but the Browns were banking on his talent being so good that it wouldn't matter. And then when Watson finally returned, he sucked. I mean, it was really bad, and they finished 7-10 that season, missing the playoffs. Despite the disappointing season, there was still hope. Cleveland's defense showed tons of promise, led by Myles Garrett and their insane secondary. And their running game was top tier with Nick Chubb, who still is one of the best running backs in the league. Browns fans and their front office still believe that with a full offseason of practice and a warmed up Deshaun Watson, the 2023 season would finally be their year. In the offseason, Cleveland focused on beefing up their defense and making sure Watson had the tools to succeed. They added depth in their defensive line and brought in safety Juwan Thornhill to solidify their secondary. And their offensive line also got attention. And I mean, on paper, this Cleveland team was built to be competitive in a tough AFC North division. The combination of Watson, Nick Chubb, Amari Cooper, and Elijah Moore had the potential to be an offensive powerhouse. Add in their strong defense led by Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, and newly acquired pieces, and the Browns looked like they could make a serious playoff run. But as we've seen before, well, what's good on paper doesn't always translate to the field. Coming into this preseason, buzz around Cleveland was real. Both Browns fans and analysis believed that this team had the talent to make a playoff run, and the full offseason for Watson meant he would be much sharper compared to his rusty 2022 return. The coaching staff also felt very confident, but that all amounted to nothing since Deshaun Watson looked terrible. His decision making was questionable, and then he got injured. And in came in Big Boy Joe, who carried the Browns team to a wild card game. Just joking, Joe did play great. The defense was just spectacular. It's at least top 3 in the league, but that really just shows how dominant this Browns team was if they had a quarterback who actually wanted to play football. In this year's offseason, they really didn't do much because they couldn't. They had no cap and 0 draft capital. And as we headed into week 1, the Browns traveled to Dallas for what was supposed to be a competitive game. What we got instead was a one-sided beatdown. Dallas controlled the game from start to finish, putting up 33 points while holding Cleveland to just 17. And I'll give the Cowboys props. The offense, the defense, and special teams were amazing, but the Browns struggled to do anything, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Cleveland's defense did all they could to keep them in the game, but there's only so much you can do when your offense keeps on stalling out. Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb were efficient, and shockingly, Ezekiel Elliott actually looked pretty good. Though with Deshaun Watson not being able to keep the drive going, the defense eventually wore down by the third quarter. It was obvious that the constant pressure was catching up to them. Dak Prescott started to pick them apart, making big throws over the middle. And then Ezekiel Elliott, yes, that Ezekiel Elliott, started to find holes in the run game. Elliott, who many people, myself included, thought was washed, showed up like it was 2016 again. I've said it before, and let me be crystal clear. Deshaun Watson is holding the Cleveland Browns back, and this game against the Cowboys proved it. Watson looked awful. He couldn't scramble, he couldn't throw accurately, and couldn't get this offense moving. You would expect better from a guy who was once considered one of the top quarterbacks in the league. But right now, Watson looks completely lost out there. Sure, the offensive line was terrible, but we've seen quarterbacks with less time making better decisions and throws. I honestly think he's a week away from having a suspicious knee injury and being out for the season again. He has $230 million in the bank, so he has 0 incentive to play. In this game alone, he had 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions for just 169 yards. This is not what the Browns signed up for when they traded all their draft stock and cap for him. After a performance like this, Cleveland has to be looking in the mirror. Deshaun Watson is not living up to expectations. The defense is solid but can't do anything on their own. And their offensive line needs to be more consistent. If Watson can't fix his issues, the Browns are looking at another wasted season. It's just sad since I know this team has too much talent on this roster to be struggling like this. Nick Chubb is one of the best running backs in the league. Amari Cooper is a legitimate wide receiver 1. And the defense has playmakers. They're in possibly the best division in the NFL right now, and while everyone else is getting better, they're getting worse. This year, they don't have Joe Flacco to come out and dominate. They have no cap, just getting their draft picks back, and are only getting older. It is only week 1 and I am overreacting, but it just doesn't look good for the Browns. They have to make some changes. I'm your cousin Bubba, and I'll see you with some more football content.